Hey fellow artists, today we're going to learn about the first part of a project, bulb ornaments. This is one of my favorite projects to do around the holiday times because it is pretty easy and the results look pretty realistic. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to start off with this little worksheet. My art people at home, I have sent this to you, and it should have been given to you by your homeroom teachers. I created this and it's just called paint, simply. You have 3 circles and we're going to make these circles that are 2-dimensional into spheres. A sphere is a 3-dimensional circle. It has depth to it. So the way we're going to make it appear like it has depth is we're going to paint it in a certain way, and we're also going to put a little shiny spot on it. So before we get started with painting, I want you to draw on each one a little claw shape. Draw yours lightly so you can't really see it. Mine's a little bit darker than it should be, but see how it looks a little bit similar to the shape of a claw or a hook? That's one way you can make a shiny spot. That's how I like to do it. Some people like to make shiny spots by just making a little square and another little square next to it. You could do that. I'm going to stick with the claw shape, the same side of each one of my circles. If you have a more interesting way to make a shiny highlight spot, go for it, I say. Next, we are going to do the painting. Now, what we want to do is pick some analogous colors. So I have some little notes here on the side that might be too small for you to read, but it helps if you take a peek at this color wheel. We're going to choose analogous colors to shoot for our circle here. So analogous colors are basically 2 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So for instance, a yellow and a light green would be analogous colors. Blue violet and violet would be analogous colors. They're right next to each other. It looks more interesting if you choose 2 different colors as opposed to just one color when you're painting, because it makes it look a little bit more realistic, and it also offers that idea of depth. So I'm going to set this aside here so we can have this to look at. And here's some color combinations that I've listed out that might look good. So red and orange will look good. Some people have sets that have a lot of these secondary and tertiary colors in them. If you remember, a secondary color is a color that you can make using the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. So for instance, yellow and blue make green. That would be a secondary color. A tertiary color might be a lighter green. So green mixed with yellow would be a light green. If you don't have a set with the tertiary colors, a red and an orange would look good together, or an orange and a yellow. So a primary next to a secondary would look good too. But remember that word, analogous colors. 2 colors next to each other on the color wheel. Let's get started with the painting. You could really use any colors that you want. Stay away from blacks and browns. You want to definitely pick something that's on the color wheel, because for holiday ornaments, we want nice bright colors that appear to shine. As I paint this, I'm going to avoid this little claw shape. I want that to remain as white as it possibly can, because it's going to look like a highlight or a shiny spot. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to try purple and red, or a red violet. So I'm going to start off with, let's see, I think this is purpley. You see that on the camera there? I'm going to start off and I'm going to put that, oh, it's very, very magenta. It's okay if you go over the lines on this. You don't have to paint directly inside the circle, because we're cutting these out later. So you don't have to spend too much time trying to get it to stay inside the circle. Definitely try to not get it inside the claw shape though. Use a lot of water. We don't want a line running through, so there's one side of one color and one side of another color. We want it to blend in the middle, so what I like to do is take a little wet paintbrush and then go over it after I paint it, so the 2 colors blend into one another. So it looks very rich. This paper is thin and it'll definitely buckle a little bit. So after it dries, I'm gonna put this under a book so it gets nice and flat. But that's one example of analogous colors next to each other. Looks pretty decent. Let's try a different one. Let's try light green, or green and blue, or green and green blue. So I've got green here, swirling it up, activating my watercolor, avoiding that claw shape, but again, not being super concerned about staying inside the lines of my circle. And I'm not making it too dark. Notice how I'm just putting down a nice light, thin layer of paint. Well, that one looks pretty dark. I'm gonna add a little more water. Watercolors are supposed to be see-through. Now right here, I've got a line. I don't want that. I don't want a line where there's one color on one side and another color on the other side. So I'm going to clean my brush, just have a little bit of water on it, and I'm gonna run over that line so it blurs and blends. See the difference? It's a little bit shiny in here, I know, sorry about the light, but see how there's no line anymore? You wanna make it so there's no line there. All right, last color. Let's do, I did purple and red. How about orange and yellow? Let's try that. Start with my yellow first. It's pretty bright, intense yellow. I'm trying to avoid that claw. A little bit got in there, that's okay if a tiny bit gets in there. Then I'm gonna go ahead and do my orange. And we want to avoid that line, right? We don't want a perfect line. So I'm going to blend that out. Try to get rid of that line. Okay, so as this dries, it might get a little funny and warbly. I have a puddle here, so I might have an interesting line of puddle, but that's okay. It's very natural, it's organic looking. Let it be. Let it dry, leave it alone. After it does dry, put a book on it, get it nice and flat, and then come back and see me for part 2 of our bulb ornaments. If you accidentally paint over the claw, next time I'm going to show you a trick of how to get that claw back too. See you in a bit.